Good morning from sunny Florida, except it is sunny, but it's very cold here. We're having quite the cold snap here. We're not used to it, but we're going to have our oven going this morning. Maybe it'll warm us up a little bit. Something sweet is about to happen, and this morning I'm going to make a cake that's very important in our family. The name is kind of funny. We call it an ugly cake, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as we go along, and I'll let you know why we call it that and how it got its start. It's been part of my life since I was a little girl, and my mother made this cake. So we're going to start with making a yellow cake in a 9 by 13 pan. So we're going to start that process right now. The first thing that we're going to need, we're going to use cake flour, which I don't usually use, but this recipe specifically calls for cake flour. When my mother made it, she used a box cake mix, but I'm not going to do that. So we are going to use cake flour. It's a finer flour, and it must be important in this recipe. So we're going to weigh that on our scale in grams so that we're sure we have the exact measurement. And it will take 266 grams of flour. So we're going to measure that. We're going to weigh it. 266 grams, which is 2 1/4 cups if you're doing it in a cup. Come on. A little bit more. Okay, we did it. So there's our flour. To that, we're doing our dry ingredients right now. So to that, we're going to add 2 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder. There's 1, 2, and 1/2 of baking powder, and 1/4 of a teaspoon. I have too many spoons on here. 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. Okay, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt for some contrast, as one of my favorite YouTubers always says. So I'm going to use my whisk and just whisk these dry ingredients together, and we'll set those aside while we work on the liquid or wet ingredients for this cake. It calls for 2 sticks of softened butter. I have a little kitchen gadget that I really, really love, especially if I'm going to be beating up butter so that it gets nice and fluffy. It is soft butter, but it works even better if it's in small pieces. And this is such a $2.99 or something like that at Amazon. Cuts it into little pieces. And then it beats up better. I can put it in my mixing bowl, and it beats up more easily because it's not in one big piece. So we're going to put 2 sticks of butter in our mixing bowl, maybe. Make sure we get it all in there. Okay, we can set that aside, and we'll break that up just a little bit, and we will put in our sugar, which has already been measured. A 1.5 cups of granulated sugar. We're going to beat this for 3 full minutes so that it gets very light and fluffy. So I'm going to turn it on, and then I'll pause this video while it beats for 3 full minutes. We'll scrape down the sides a couple of times during that time so that we're sure we're getting it all mixed together and combined completely. Okay, I'll see you back in just a minute. The sugar and the butter have been beating for 3 minutes or more. You can see how light and fluffy it's gotten. It changes color from the yellow buttery color to a whiter, lighter mixture. It makes the cake fluffy and nice. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to turn the mixer on a medium. Oh, before I do that, I want to remind everybody that all of the ingredients for this cake have been sitting out so that they come to room temperature. So much better, not absolutely necessary, but so much better if your ingredients are at room temperature when you start. So I've had these things sitting out for a couple of hours so that the butter gets soft and the eggs and the milk and the sour cream, which we're going to add in just a few minutes, are all at room temperature, and they're not cold when we add them into the batter. So the next thing we're going to add are our eggs. I've already broken them. They've been sitting out there at room temperature, and we will add them one at a time to this mixture. Let that one incorporate. And then we will add the other one. Let it incorporate. And then we're going to add our vanilla flavoring. It calls for 2 teaspoons, but if you've watched my videos in the last little while, you know that my measuring of vanilla is very, there we go, we added that. I'm going to let that beat for just a minute. I'm going to stop the mixer and scrape down the sides, make sure we've scraped everything off the paddle and off the sides and the bottom. Sometimes ingredients, especially in a stand mixer, will get kind of stuck on the bottom and they don't get mixed in. We want everything mixed in completely so that we don't have hidden things lurking around somewhere that aren't mixed appropriately. All right, scrape this off. All right, we'll let that back up. The next thing that we're going to add is the sour cream. It's also been sitting out so that it's come to room temperature. We're going to put that in. This is the last of our wet ingredients. So our next step when this gets incorporated is to add the dry ingredients. When we add dry ingredients to a cake, we alternate the flour and the milk, starting with flour and ending with flour, always. Now, this mixture, when I added the sour cream, looks curdled. Don't let that worry you. It's okay. It's expected. It will come back together when we add the dry ingredients. All right, one more scrape to make sure we've got all that mixed together. It's very liquidy, but we're going to fix that when we add the flour and the milk. Once we add the flour, we're not going to mix it very long because that's when we could activate gluten, and we don't want this cake to be tough at all. So we are going to add flour, and half the milk. Then we'll add flour. And the other half of the milk. And then we'll add the remainder of the flour. And we will only let that mix until it's almost incorporated. At that point in time, we'll take the beater out and we'll finish mixing it by hand with a spatula to make sure that we don't overmix it, to make sure we have everything blended in appropriately. So we're going to clean off this paddle. We can still see flour that's not mixed in this batter, and that's okay. That's what we're going to do with our spatula. That way we know everything is combined, but that we haven't beaten it. We haven't beaten it too long. Okay. Take this off. Scrape all the flour off the side, up from the bottom. You can feel some at the bottom that hasn't been incorporated completely. And now we have our cake batter. Isn't that's a nice batter. Very happy with that. So we're going to bake this cake in a 9 by 13 pan. One of my favorite things. So we're going to bring sorry about that, folks. We're going to bring the pan over. Just look how beautiful it is. It's one of my most favorite Polish pottery pieces. I love it so much. And we're going to pour this batter into that pan. It's not a thick batter. It's a thinner batter, so it's easy for it to spread where it needs to spread in the pan. We're going to make sure we get it all scraped out of there. And we'll put it in the oven. It will bake. You can bake it in a bigger pan if you'd like to, but this one is going to go in a 9 by 13 pan. And so it will take it 35 minutes or so to get done. We will use a toothpick. I use my Pampered Chef cake tester. It'll also spring back when you touch it. So we're going to be putting it in the oven in just a minute. Before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about what's going to happen next. While this cake is baking, and I'll bring you back for this part too, we will cook a fudge icing to go on this cake. And that is part of why we call it an ugly cake. We want the icing to be cooked and ready when the cake comes out of the oven. As soon as this cake comes out of the oven, we're going to take a wooden spoon and we're going to poke holes all in it. We're going to cook that fudge icing, not quite all the way, and we're going to pour it over this cake and it'll go down in all those holes. Then we'll beat the last little bit and spread it on the top. But guess what? It never looks really pretty. That's why we call it an ugly cake. My niece Elena asked me to do this video because it's one of her favorite things. It's one of our favorite things. It was her family's birthday cakes. That's what they always had for birthdays. My oldest sister, Sherry, I talked about her yesterday with her oatmeal raisin cookies. This was one of her specialties. So I'm doing this to honor her and to honor her children. So I'll be back with you in just a minute. I'm sorry about my emotion, but this is very important to me. So I'll be back with you in just a few minutes when we start to make the icing, make the fudgy icing that's going to go in this ugly cake. I'll see you in a few. I'm back. The cake's in the oven. It's got maybe 10 more minutes until it's done. So it's time to start this frosting that we're going to put into this ugly cake. The recipe I use for this is the exact same recipe I use when I make chocolate fudge. It's just not cooked quite as long. So we're going to start that. My mother always made a recipe. I make a recipe and a half because we like a lot of fudgy icing in there. So we're going to start with 3 cups of granulated sugar, and we'll put them in this pot. I'm letting my eye get warm. It'll also take this pot over here, 3/4 of a cup of milk. Now, in this recipe, it's not so important that it be room temperature. We're going to be heating it anyway. So we're going to stir this milk and sugar together. It'll be thick, and that's okay. Oh, we'll need the candy thermometer. We'll get that in just a minute. All right, we're going to put this on the eye and let it start heating. We will also need a stick and a half of butter. I use salted. If you use unsalted, I'd add a little bit more than a pinch of salt because I still put we don't want butter paper in here. This butter got cut in more pieces than it sometimes does, but that's okay. It's all going to go in here. I've got a little piece of butter paper in there. We don't want that in our frosting. And another whole stick. Start to stir that together. And because I'm using salted butter, I'm only going to put just a pinch of salt and it balances out. Sorry for the abrupt stop to that last video. What a mistake. You know what we didn't put in? The cocoa. We can't have chocolate frosting for this cake if we don't have any cocoa in there. So we just stopped and we got the cocoa and we're back in business. So we've got the icing on the eye. It's cooking. It'll be stirred. When I make fudge, I cook it to 246 degrees on my candy thermometer. For this, I don't go quite that high because we want it to not be quite as thick as a candy. So I'll probably cook it to 243 or 244. So it's going to take a little while. I'm going to leave this and go check on the cake. We're back again. It's cooking. It's up to 97 or 98 degrees. Cooking. The cake was not quite done, so I've set the timer for another 5 minutes. We're going to let this frosting start to cook. When it gets to 243 degrees or 244, I hadn't decided yet. I'll kind of see how it looks when it gets there. We will add vanilla flavoring. If you put the vanilla in now, the flavor will cook out, so we won't put it in until the end. We'll take it to the sink with some cold water and we'll beat it for just a second, and then we'll pour it into the cake. Then we'll beat the last of it for a few minutes and spread it on the top. So I'm sorry this video has been a little bit disjointed. Seems like several things have gone wrong, but that's the way things are when you're baking, when you're cooking it. Everything doesn't go smooth all the time. Mistakes get made, there are uh-ohs, and we have to back up and figure out what to do. That's just the way it goes. So you're with me on this journey. All right, I'm going to go and I will come back when the cake is done and show you what we're going to do with that. And then again, when the icing gets ready and we're ready to ice this ugly cake that will be delicious. If the cake is out of the oven, we used the little Pampered Chef tester and we tested and it came out clean in the middle. So this icing is still cooking over here. We're going to take our wooden spoon and we're going to poke holes all over this cake. So that icing can go all down in there. All right, did that. Now we can come back over and our icing has gotten to 196 degrees. Actually, it's up to 200. You see it boiling away. And we want it to get to 243 degrees. So we're going to let it finish cooking and we'll bring you back when it gets ready to pour into this cake. The icing got to where we wanted it to get. I misspoke. It's not 243, it's 233 or 234. So I added the vanilla flavoring and I'm just going to cool it just a little bit. before I pour the first of it over that cake. Just a little bit. And then I'll come back and beat it a little more before I put what we're going to put on the top. Almost ready. Almost ready. And as it cools, it starts to thicken a little bit. We don't want it to thicken too much because we want it to go down into those holes and make this cake. All right, we're just going to start pouring. Look at that. I'm going to pour this in here. Make sure we've covered all of the top with ooey gooey chocolate. All right. Now we're going to go back to the sink and beat it just a little bit more, and then we'll spread some on the top. All right, we're going to pour the rest of this icing on the top. You can see how it's thickened more. We're going to pour that on. Spread it on the top. Get all of that fudgy goodness out of here. Make sure it gets on there. Spread it out. Oh my goodness. Does that not look delicious? Not pretty, ugly, but delicious. See. All right, Elena. It's hot. It's hotter than I thought. All right, Aunt Sherry, my sister Sherry, Anita, Jim, Chuck, Amy, Elena, Mitchell. I can't even name them all, but you know I love you all. This one's for you. It's the ugly cake. I hope you'll make this and your family will make it a tradition like it's been a tradition in our family. I hope something just this sweet is happening to you today. All right, there it is. Do you see why we call it ugly? Look down here on the side where that icing dripped all down in there. It's so tender it just fell apart. It looks absolutely delicious. We're gonna take a taste. Sabrina, would you like to take a taste?
Sure.
Are you ready? What do you think?
Oh, Mom.
Is that good or what? It'll set up a little bit more as it sits, but this is the ooey gooey part. That is divine. Thank you for suggesting this, Elena. Love you.